Feel the tension right now. This is playoff atmosphere.
Ooh, crazy is what they think about me.
He makes a sensational catch.
Talk about a momentum changer. The Mets has done it again.
Got him looking. Our own drum. It goes, they go, we go. Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. Did he walk him up?
There she goes.
You bet he did.
That's as emotional as a win as we've seen all year.
Hi, this is a Business of Sport class presentation on Major League Baseball. This was done by Nicholas Casey, Ivan Willie, and Stephen Winarto. First, a brief overview of baseball as a sport in general. It's played with 9 players on each team. Those positions are including the pitcher, catcher, first baseman, second baseman, shortstop, third baseman. Those are your infield positions. The outfield positions consist of left field, center field, right field. There are 30 Major League Baseball teams across the United States and in Canada. Each team plays 164 games a season, and there are a certain amount of teams that make the 4 rounds of playoffs that determine the World Series winner. There are 9 innings in each game. Each team gets to bat once in each inning. Each inning has 3 outs, and each at-bat has 3 strikes. Now we move on to the development section of Major League Baseball, America's pastime. Some people believe the founder of Major League Baseball, or just baseball in general, was Abner Doubleday in 1839. Others believe it was a myth and that he stole it from other people. An actual investigation took place in 1907 by a commission hired by the government that claimed he was the founder. Believe it or not, the investigation was actually disproven by the government following more information finding that the basic game was brought over by English immigrants in 1744. The first game was actually reported in the early 1840s. A clerk in Manhattan actually started the first baseball club in 1842. The first baseball league was actually organized in 1858, and it was called the National Association of Baseball Players, or the NABP. It included teams from Washington, D.C., Boston, Massachusetts, New York City, New York, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Cleveland, Ohio. An actually interesting fact about this league was that players didn't earn salaries or nearly any money at all. It's crazy to see how much has changed since then. Development continued. The Major League Baseball was formed in 1869. The first Major League Baseball team formed was the Cincinnati Red Stockings, which is now known as the Cincinnati Reds in Cincinnati, Ohio. In 1900 to 1920, there was an era in baseball known as the dead ball era. It was an era where Major League Baseball pitchers dominated the scene. Games were really low scoring, and there were scores like 1-2, 1-0 for games. Big pitchers involved in this era were Cy Young, Walter Johnson, and Grover Alexander. In 1919, there was a match-fixing scandal that shook Major League Baseball to its core. In the 1919 World Series, the Chicago White Sox players, 6 of them, were accused of throwing the game intentionally and losing the game on purpose. They were found guilty, and they were all banned from life from Major League Baseball. Baseball experienced a really big rise in popularity during the 1920s and 30s. This happened because a couple changes in the rules made the games a lot more high-scoring and a lot more attractable for people to go attend. But during World War II, the popularity of baseball went down dramatically due to all the things that were going on at the time, and there was not enough players to be playing in the leagues. In 1946, the black barrier was broken down when the Brooklyn Dodgers drafted Black American Jackie Robinson. He won Rookie of the Year, and even though it upset many people, this was one of the first big movements in African American rights in the United States. Moving on to more current information, we'll look at commercialization in Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball agreed a record-breaking new TV deal with ESPN, Fox Sports, TBS, and MLB Network for 8 years worth over $12 billion. TV right deal sees ESPN getting the bulk of the broadcast and paying $306 million annually, along with Fox getting $257 million annually, and TBS paying $148 million annually. In 2014, Major League Baseball saw their sponsorship revenue increased 4.8% to $695 million a year. Some big sponsors include Anheuser-Busch and New Era. Let's look at Major League Baseball's major sponsors. Some consist of Gatorade, Frito-Lay, Gillette, MasterCard, Nike, and many others. This graphic shows the different categories of sponsorships in that Major League Baseball. This shows that alcoholic beverages and food dominate sponsorship in baseball. Also, while sports apparel equipment are on the lower end of the spectrum, while auto and insurance and bank and credit cards and retail are also up there. This graphic shows the sponsorship revenue rankings for each individual team in the Major League Baseball. Obviously, the New York Yankees are one of the top sponsorship teams in the league. That goes to the Los Angeles Angels, Dodgers, Boston Red Sox. Teams that have poor marketing like the Oakland Athletics, Kansas City Royals, Tampa Bay Rays, and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Those are low market teams. Now, one of Major League Baseball's most prized assets, the New York Yankees, the fourth most valuable team in the entire world. They're currently worth $2.5 billion. Now to the governance structure in Major League Baseball. The governance structure is actually Major League Baseball itself. Major League Baseball has a head position, and they call it the MLB Commissioner. The commissioner kind of acts as like a CEO of a company. The past CEO or commissioner was Bud Selig, who was the Selig. He was the commissioner for quite a long time. The new commissioner, who is new this past year, is Rob Manfred. Major League Baseball has control and governance over both the National League and the American League, as well as the 160 teams in the minor league baseball league system, which are farm teams that are owned by the Major League Baseball teams, and they use them to bring up their youth players or other players that they have drafted. Some things the MLB governance structure does is that they enforce rules and hand out punishments. Some big punishments that they hand out normally are drug use related suspensions or steroid and performance enhancing drug suspensions. Other big things are the luxury tax, which is when MLB teams overspend soft salary caps and they are charged or taxed another 15% off their salary cap. One final thing about governance is the Major League Baseball Players Association. It's a very powerful group that has the players' interests at mind and is controlled by different people hired by groups of players. They have a lot of power because they can cause lockouts, which can have seasons not even be played. It's happened before. It happened in 1994. It's happened in many different sports in the United States. Moving on to the current issues in Major League Baseball. The biggest and most known issue in baseball, and still is going on today, is the performance-enhancing drugs, or steroids, or human growth hormones. In 2002, baseball finally began testing for performance-enhancing drugs, as it was obvious most players in Major League Baseball were on steroids. Major League Baseball was really tentative to start doing this because steroids actually were helping the game. They were making the games more exciting. There were more home runs. The home run chase between Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire was one of the most sought-after things in Major League Baseball during the late 90s and early 2000s. In 2006, Major League Baseball came out with their own independent report called the Mitchell Report. It came out and was an in-depth investigation about steroid use in Major League Baseball. They found many people to be under the use of steroids, and they named them all. A couple of the notable big names were Roger Clemens, the famous pitcher, Barry Bonds, the current leader in career home runs, and Miguel Tejada, a standout shortstop in the league. The most recent list that came out in 2013 named 20 more players that were caught in a steroid ring in Florida. Two big names that were caught were Alex Rodriguez and Ryan Braun, who plays for the Milwaukee Brewers.
For the very first time, and now many are asking, do players suspected of steroid use deserve to be on the ballot? And obviously Rob Parker joins us. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. You obviously get this question. You love the baseball. Tell us all about
And
it.
you've got a vote.
And I have a vote, and I have been voting for Mark McGwire, and I will vote for Bonds, Clemens, and Sosa. And here's my fundamental problem I have with Major League Baseball. You can't have it both ways, Skip. You can't count the stats, count the wins, count the championships, count the attendance, but then when it comes down to those guys who play, all of a sudden say, no, you don't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame when everything counts. It would be different, like Reggie Bush had to give up his Heisman. Lance Armstrong gave up his Tour de France titles. Marion Jones gave up her Olympic. If you're talking about stripping those guys and then saying you don't belong in the Hall of Fame, maybe I can buy that. But it's hypocritical to allow everything to stand and still be there. And the other part is, while everybody talks about steroids and this whole notion that it altered the game enough that during that era, we have some of the greatest pitchers who ever pitched Major League Baseball. Maddox, Smoltz, Glavine, Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, Roy Halladay, they all succeeded during that era. So don't tell me that the game was altered and that these guys don't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
Do you know for a fact none of them used
I don't
any
know.
PEDs?
And that's the situation.